The 90s is the golden age of boy bands. There's too many notable examples here to even go into depth for each of them.
The boy band. Is there anything that symbolizes the current state of music more than a bunch of pouting adolescents lip-syncing to the sounds of computer-generated dance music? Although you have to admit, it's kind of a poetic eulogy for an art form that really got going back in the early 60s, thanks to a boy band. Oh, I know, Muddy Waters, Elvis Presley, Creedence Clearwater. Sorry about the pick, but Fat Elvis is my favorite Elvis. The Beatles weren't the first, but they certainly took rock music mainstream in a way that hadn't been before. And in 1962, they were marketed much the same way that 2020 markets its boy bands. Looks, attire. It seems funny now, but in the age of the crew cut, those mop tops were the height of bad boy rebellion. And the girls went crazy. There is one little difference we should probably mention, though. What did the current batch of heartthrobs do with their fame? Burn out at 23? Live out the rest of their lives as the idle rich? Make the occasional cameo appearance in a movie or at a car show? Fire up a chain of gourmet hot dog stands? Yep, that's a former member of NSYNC. Okay, let's compare. What did the Beatles do with their fame? They used it as a platform, a solid base of support that they were able to leverage and so branch out, becoming better musicians, learning new techniques, taking all sorts of new and interesting elements from the burgeoning rock scene, polishing those elements, and then delivering them to a wider audience. So why didn't they just continue with the winning formula, then lounge around the pool all day like our boy banders? Because they were artists. They were art professionals. Professional as in something outside of and above yourself that you profess to the value and importance of. Just like I'm constantly telling my crew at work, be professional, as opposed to furthering their personal agendas. At work, they should be serving their profession. The Beatles had enough professionalism to keep working and eventually to become the best-selling and most influential rock band in history. So what happened between that generation and this one? Between the era of professionals and the era of the self-serving? Joseph Gordon-Levitt has a TED Talk where he pretty much sums it up.
Not immune to this. I think that our creativity is becoming more and more of a means to an end. And that end is to get attention.
You see, between the early days of the Fab Four and our current crisis, our culture dispensed with the traditional systems of value, that being God and family, and left a vacuum of meaning in people's lives. And for the last 20 years, ever increasingly, the goal of the average person has been to fill that vacuum with a gallery of nameless faces who will reflect back to them the image of how they want to see themselves. The ethics of the narcissist. I'm a good person because everybody tells me I'm a good person. And if they don't tell me I'm a good person, then I put them on ignore. That way they don't exist. That way everyone who does exist is telling me that I'm a good person. And that makes me a good person. That's the circular logic of the modern social media echo chamber, insulated from the outside by our very need to justify ourselves and our actions. In the last video of this series, we talked about the visual arts and how transcendence comes at a cost. You have to be both willing to accept what inspiration is telling you about yourself and your world, even if it's not what you wanted to hear. So, no, you can't be living in the echo chamber and expect to in any way be capable of producing some transcendent work of art. And also, you have to be ready to engage in a serious amount of work. It turns out that there's a set of best practices that comes with any art form. Some paints work better on certain surfaces than others, and the serious painter needs to know this, just like the serious writer has to know both their grammar and the appeal of the genre that they're writing in to understand how to write compelling fiction. We saw this at its most extreme with the switchover from pictographic writing to alphabetic or speech-based writing, and how that unleashed human creativity by giving us a language to express complex concepts. And actually, we can still see this today. Ever wonder why the Chinese are always stealing inventions rather than creating their own? Their language is pictographic. Some years back, a friend of mine was working on helicopter accessories with a Chinese company. He had to fly over to their factory time and time again. When I asked why, he told me they follow instructions just fine, but no matter how well they understand the parts, they can never seem to extrapolate or troubleshoot. And I'm sure that language isn't the only factor here. Their education system has stressed conformity since the communist takeover days. But even in the most open of their special economic zones, you still see this same phenomenon. What happens if you bring them over here, raise them on alphabetic language-based systems, throw in a few of those tiger moms? They crush it, from technology to the arts. So, we need an open, humble, teachable attitude, and we need to be willing to put in the time and effort to master the craft. And is there an art form where this is more obvious than rock music? Think of it this way. In the early 70s, Led Zeppelin was tearing it up. Hit album after hit album with songs that are still considered the best rock has ever produced. Fast forward 50 years, and this is Greta Van Fleet. They sound remarkably like Led Zeppelin. And this isn't to badmouth them, I actually like some of their stuff, but does anyone? Does their biggest fan, do their own mothers, think that they are about to write the next Stairway to Heaven? I'm guessing no. There's still good music being made, of course there is, but the flood of greatness is over. Like another friend said to me, this is the day and age of the tribute bands. Not even trying to create their own stuff, just playing the classics now. Those guys are getting too old. But why is that age over? Because the earlier stuff was made by artists, working to create something bigger than themselves, and they worked, let me tell you. Zeppelin went all the way to India to learn different musical techniques. Rush's drummer, Neil Peart, at the height of the band's fame, met a jazz drummer who could do things that he couldn't. So what did Peart do? He got this guy to teach him, and he completely relearned the way to play drums. These people worked at it. They weren't all bums like the Rolling Stones. Okay, that was awesome. Might include that in one of our survival videos. Now, how do they make rock music?
And that humanity has been taken away to a certain degree when you quantize things, when you auto-tune things, when you use all canned sounds. When I say canned sounds, I mean sounds that come from computers.
That's musician and producer Rick Beato, by the way. Love his videos, link below. And in that video, he makes the point that a lot of what modern music makers consider imperfections were the humanity, the emotion, the feel that resonated to the listener. Now it's Spotify and Autotune and all the rest, formulas. And I think all those computer programs are part of why music is so formulaic now, along with the obsession with self, declining work ethic, and overall lack of inspiration that comes with our culture's denial of a spirit. Inspiration, literally, entering of the spirit. But there's one other factor I want to address. Music, especially rock music, has a peculiar little facet to it. You see, most other art forms have a sort of mentoring program. Lots of successful painters and writers and such wind up teaching what they know to the next generation. Rock music? For some reason, not so much. Now, I don't want to dwell on the dark side of rock and roll. I really enjoyed the spat of documentaries that have come out recently on Netflix and Amazon Prime. And I appreciate that they focus on the artists and their artistic process rather than on the fights or the drugs or the mental breakdowns. If that's your thing, fine. I think that's a little sad, but okay. The one you're looking for, really, is the Leonard Skinner one on Amazon Prime. That one is a dumpster fire from start to finish. And I do mean finish. There's an end scene after the credits, so don't miss that. Alright, back on topic. Concepts. We're talking concepts. That means broad analogies. And if you're looking for a broad analogy of this staring at the sun, entering the realm of forbidden knowledge motif, getting transcendence but finding out that you weren't quite ready for it, you're talking about the prototype of all the mad scientist movies. You're talking about the Faustian drama. Dr. Faustus, who like King Arthur probably started out as an actual historical person before the pile of folklore built up around him. His is the story of an early Renaissance doctor who wants to know all there is about the healing arts. And so the devil appears and makes him an offer. Why go blind studying all your life by candlelight when I can just give you the knowledge now? All I need is your eternal soul upon your death. Faust cuts the deal, and in most versions spends the better part of the story enjoying his newfound knowledge, and then just trying to avoid getting dragged down to hell. What does that have to do with rock music? Think of the food image from the last video. Food's good, right? Some healthier than others. Eat junk all day, you might get sick. But eat a lot of leafy greens, you'll be okay. Except that even those leafy greens have a little secret. Take spinach, for example. It contains oxalic acid. Eat too much and you'll poison yourself. We just don't think of it as a poison because nobody eats that much spinach. Now take something like success. Good thing, right? Too much of it, though, if you're not ready for it, and you can poison yourself. And so many of the great rock bands did just that. They poisoned themselves. And I don't just mean with drugs. A lot of them just let the fame go to their heads. Pink Floyd, the Eagles, Van Halen. Ever heard David Byrne from the Talking Heads interviewed? Man thinks he's a god. My gosh, you were the lead singer of a quirky college band that got lucky and hit it big. Stop talking about yourself in the third person. The longest running rock band in history is ZZ Top. Still the same three guys making music after almost 50 years. They have a rockumentary out on Netflix. Not nearly as much fun as the Leonard Skinner one, but still. Near the end, the interviewer asked them what their secret is. They didn't have an answer. Come back for the fourth video and I'll answer the question they couldn't. I'll tell you how they've been able to stay together so long. I'll give you my strategy for putting transcendence back into your life and tell you how to avoid some of the pitfalls. And maybe how to avoid addressing yourself in the third person. This is David Reichert from The Bunker. Hit like and subscribe and click the notification bell and we'll try and put out at least one video a week. Also, our pandemic horror series, The Holocaust Engine, is available September 14th. Link for pre-order down below.